The ringing of my phone sliced through the stale air of my home office like a damn fire alarm. I was neck-deep in spreadsheets that were actively trying to suck out my soul, so the interruption was almost welcome. Almost. Caller ID showed Dr. Ramirez. Hopewell. My stomach did a little flip. Elena calling usually meant something was up with a fundraiser, or maybe a quick question about the patient advocacy program I volunteered with. This time, her voice was different. Taut. Like a guitar string wound too tight. "Elena, what's wrong? You sound—" I started, already pushing away from the keyboard. "Mike, there's no water." 3 little words. Simple, impossible. "The mains, they're dry. Someone shut it off." My brain stalled, trying to process. What? How? An accident? City maintenance screw-up? Hopewell Burn Center wasn't some corner clinic. It was a major facility. Water was like air there. "No." Her voice cracked. The HOA, Fairweather Palms Homeowners Association. Something about dues for the access road the hospital technically shares an easement with. They sent notices, apparently. We thought it was a clerical error. Mike, they've padlocked the main valve. HOA? Dues? For a burn center? My sister, Sarah, was practically rebuilt in that place 3 years ago, after that horrific apartment fire. They didn't just save her life. They gave it back to her. Piece by agonizing, painstakingly reconstructed piece. And now some power-tripping suburban committee was turning off their water? Over an access road fee? It felt like a prank. A really, really sick prank. "I'm on my way," I said, already grabbing my keys. This had to be a mistake. A giant, monumentally stupid mistake that a little bit of calm reasoning could fix. Oh, how wrong I was. I screeched into a parking spot at Hopewell, my tires protesting. The place looked normal from the outside, but there was a frantic energy humming beneath the surface. Nurses huddled in anxious clusters, their voices low and worried. I saw Jim, one of the facilities guys, near the property line. He was drenched in sweat, staring at a series of heavy-duty valve boxes with an expression of utter disbelief. Each one was wrapped in thick chain, secured with a beefy, unapologetic padlock. A crisp white notice was stapled, almost mockingly, to the largest one. "What's the situation, Jim?" I asked, my voice tight. "Can we bypass this insanity?" He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a greasy smear. "Main valve to the whole critical care wing, Mike. Chained up tighter than Fort Knox. That notice there?" He jabbed a thumb at it. "Services suspended due to non-compliance with Fairweather Palms HOA Bylaw 7, subsection C. Signed by a Miss Agnes Periwinkle, HOA President." Agnes Periwinkle. The name sounded like something out of a bad children's story. Agnes Periwinkle, I muttered, the name already tasting like ash in my mouth. Right, I am going to find Agnes Periwinkle. Fairweather Palms was exactly what it sounded like. A Stepford Wives-esque enclave of beige houses with unnervingly perfect lawns. Roses stood in ramrod straight lines, their colors so vibrant they looked like they'd been individually spray-painted. And there, on the porch of the most pristine house of them all, was a woman who could only be Agnes Periwinkle. She was sipping iced tea from a tall glass, a queen surveying her flawless beige domain. I didn't bother with the walkway. I cut across the unnaturally green grass, my shoes probably leaving indentations that would be noted in a demerit file later. She watched my approach, her eyes narrowing as if I were a particularly resilient weed. "Miss Periwinkle, Agnes Periwinkle." I tried to keep my voice even. "And you are?" Her voice was thin, reedy, with an underlying metallic rasp, like wind chimes made of rusty nails. "The guy who wants to know why in God's name you cut the water to a burn center." The even voices thing was already failing. A flicker of something. Recognition? Annoyance? Crossed her face. Ah, the hospital. She took a delicate sip of her tea. Yes, delinquent on their shared infrastructure fees for 6 consecutive months. Bylaw 7, subsection C is quite clear on the ramifications. Ample warning was provided, I assure you. Fees? I could feel the blood starting to pound in my temples. Miss Periwinkle, there are people in there having skin grafts as we speak. They are fighting for their lives. They need sterile water and lots of it. This isn't about your damn petunias or whether their access road payment is a week late. She actually smiled. A small, prim, utterly infuriating little smirk. The financial integrity of the Fairweather Palms Homeowners Association is paramount to maintaining our community standards. Perhaps if the hospital administration managed its fiscal responsibilities with more diligence, we wouldn't find ourselves in this unfortunate predicament. Unfortunate predicament? This woman was a monster. A perfectly coiffed, iced tea-sipping, bylaw-quoting monster. There was no empathy in those cold little eyes, no glimmer of understanding, just the unyielding granite of someone who'd found a thimbleful of power and was determined to drown the world in it. Reason wasn't going to work here. I stormed back to my car, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles were white. My phone buzzed. Elena again. Her voice was thinner now, stretched to breaking point. Mike, we have 3 critical surgeries scheduled to begin in the next 2 hours. We're running on our emergency reserve tank, but that's primarily for drinking water. Basic sanitation. It won't last nearly long enough for surgical needs. If we don't have a high-volume, sterile-capable water source re-established in... God, Mike, maybe an hour or 2 at the absolute most, we have to start diverting incoming critical patients. It's catastrophic. An hour, 60 minutes. That was the fuse Agnes Periwinkle had lit. That smug, soulless woman had no idea what she'd just unleashed. Okay, Mike, I told myself, my heart hammering against my ribs. Think big, think fast, think extreme. Conventional wasn't going to cut it. My car became a mobile command center of barely controlled panic. AC blasting, engine running, I was a blur of speed dials and increasingly desperate pleas. First, city water. That was a joke. Yes, a hospital's water has been shut off by an HOA. You heard me right. What do you mean it's a civil matter and you need a court order and it could take 24 to 48 hours? People could die in 24 to 48 hours. I slammed the phone down. Useless bureaucrats. Next, a local plumbing company, one of the big ones. Yeah, hi, I need to get about, say, 10,000 gallons of water to a burn center. Like yesterday. A pause. Then a click. They'd hung up. Probably thought I was a prank caller. I tried a construction rental place. You guys rent water trucks? Like really big ones? For, a very large, very thirsty community garden project. The guy on the other end just roared with laughter. A 10,000-gallon garden, son? What are you growing, Redwoods? Not funny, man, I snapped, ending the call. This was insane. My mind raced. Who deals in bulk water? Pool companies, agricultural suppliers, rural fire departments? Could you even rent one of their tankers? Then, after scrolling through increasingly obscure online business listings, a name jumped out. Big Rick's Liquid Logistics Emergency Services. It had a certain rugged, uncorporate charm. I stabbed the call button. A voice like gravel being churned in a cement mixer answered on the second ring. Rick's. What you need moved and where to? Hi, Rick. My name's Mike. I need water, a lot of it. Like 10,000 gallons. Delivered to Hopewell Burn Center, ASAP. Life or death, ASAP. I tried to keep the desperation from cracking my voice. There was a long pause, then a low, rumbling chuckle. Burn Center, huh? You ain't just whistling Dixie about life or death, then. What happened? City main break? Worse, I said. the word tasting bitter. HOA Karen. Name of Agnes Periwinkle. Cut their water over shared infrastructure fees. Another pause. This one even longer. I could almost hear the gears turning in Big Rick's head. Then, "Lady, you said? Name of Periwinkle, by any chance? Short, kind of pinched face. Looks like she gargles with vinegar and enjoys it." I blinked, stunned. "Yeah, Agnes Periwinkle. That's her. You know her?" Big Rick let out a laugh that sounded like it could shake fillings loose. "Know her? Honey, I had the distinct displeasure of tangling with that viper over a septic tank install for her next-door neighbor 3 years back. Claimed the vibrations from my backhoe were disturbing the molecular cohesion of her prize-winning orchids. Ordinances, bylaws, the whole 9 yards. Took a damn court order just to get paid for the job." He cackled again. "All right, son. You telling me I get a chance to stick it to Agnes Periwinkle and help out a burn center in the process?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you," I said, a wild hope blooming in my chest. "Well, fry me and hog fat and call me crispy," Rick boomed. "I got a gleaming 10,000-gallon tanker that was supposed to be filling some tech billionaire's new Olympic-sized swimming pool up in the hills tomorrow. Guess what? Their chlorine levels can just damn well wait." I could have kissed him through the phone. "You're serious? How fast can you get here?" "I'm about an hour out from my main yard now. Give me 90 minutes, tops, to get her fueled, prepped, and rolling your way. But listen, Mike, this rig ain't exactly built for your average suburban cul-de-sac. There might be, shall we say, civic disruption. And you can bet your last dollar Agnes is going to call the cops, the mayor, and probably the National Guard. You gotta be ready to run interference. This is gonna be a 3-ring circus." "Spectacle is my middle name at this point, Rick. Name your price. Whatever it is, I'll cover it." "Considering the circumstances and the high likelihood of extreme entertainment value," Rick mused. "Let's call it standard hazard pay plus a hefty Agnes aggravation surcharge. We'll settle up the dollars and cents later. You just make sure my path is as clear as you can make it, or be ready for some impromptu landscaping." "You got it, Rick. See you in 90. I hung up, a giddy, slightly hysterical laugh bubbling up. This was either going to be the most spectacularly righteous plan in human history, or I was about to get arrested for causing a suburban apocalypse. Maybe both. I drove back to Fairweather Palms and parked across the street from Agnes Periwinkle's beige palace, waiting. The clock was a screaming banshee in my head. Every minute felt like an hour. Agnes emerged again, armed this time with a pair of high-powered binoculars. She scanned the street, her gaze lingering on my car. Then, with a sniff, she made a show of calling someone on her phone, probably one of her HOA stormtroopers, to report suspicious loitering. "Yeah, you keep watching, Agnes," I muttered, gripping the steering wheel. A manic grin spread across my face. "You think I'm just going to roll over and play dead? You have no earthly idea the kind of beautiful, watery chaos that's about to descend upon your perfect little kingdom." This wasn't just about bylaws anymore. This was about decency. This was about Sarah. And Agnes Periwinkle was about to get a masterclass in what happens when you push someone too far. The first sign was a low rumble, a vibration that started in the soles of my feet and worked its way up my spine. It grew steadily louder, a mechanical beast stirring in the distance. Kids on bikes, previously tracing lazy circles in the quiet suburban street, stopped, their heads cocked. A chorus of neighborhood dogs, sensing some seismic shift in their normally placid universe, began to bark. Then, around the corner of Primrose Lane, it came. It was magnificent. A gleaming, colossal 10,000-gallon stainless steel tanker truck. The words, "Big Rick's Liquid Logistics, we haul anything wet," emblazoned on its side in bold, no-nonsense lettering. It moved with the ponderous grace of a chrome whale navigating a goldfish pond, its air brakes hissing like an irritated dragon. Branches from overhanging oak trees scraped against its towering flanks. Mailboxes on their flimsy posts seemed to visibly tremble as it passed. Big Rick, a mountain of a man with a wild gray beard and a grin that could split a log, leaned out the window of the cab. "All right, sunshine," he bellowed, his voice easily carrying over the diesel thrum. "Special delivery for a lady who's about to have a real bad day. Hope you brought popcorn, 'cause the show's here." On her porch, Agnes Periwinkle's perfectly calm, iced tea-sipping facade didn't just crack, it exploded. Her jaw unhinged. A sound somewhere between a shriek and a strangled squawk escaped her. "What in the Sam Hill is that? This is a residential zone. You can't bring that thing in here. My azaleas, my pristine curbs." Neighbors were emerging from their beige boxes now, drawn by the commotion. Phones were out, recording the unfolding spectacle. This wasn't just an event. This was Fairweather Palms history in the making. Agnes was already frantically jabbing at her phone. True to Rick's prediction, within minutes, a police cruiser, lights silently flashing, pulled up behind the tanker. Officer Miller, looking young enough to still be shaving irregularly, stepped out, his expression a perfect blend of bewilderment and apprehension. Folks, what seems to be the problem here?" he stammered, his eyes wide as he took in the sheer bulk of Rick's rig. Agnes descended her porch steps like a furious, tiny goddess of suburban order. "Officer, arrest this man!" she screeched, pointing a trembling finger at me. "And this road hazard!" She gestured wildly at the tanker. "He's violating every ordinance in the Fairweather Palms Charter. Look at the street. My property values are plummeting as we speak. Think of the children." I stepped forward, trying to project an aura of calm I was miles away from feeling. Adrenaline was a live wire in my veins. "Officer, I'm Mike. This is Big Rick. Miss Periwinkle, the HOA president here," I said, making sure to enunciate her name with all the disdain it deserved, "has shut off the primary water supply to Hopewell Burn Center." I pointed dramatically towards the hospital, just visible over the manicured hedges. "They have critical patients, ongoing surgeries. We're bringing in emergency water." Big Rick leaned out his cab again, touching the brim of his greasy baseball cap. "Just a humble public servant trying to hydrate the needy, officer. Got my Class A license right here, and this here water is 100% grade A H2O, yeah, guaranteed." He patted the side of the tanker affectionately. Officer Miller looked from the gleaming behemoth to Agnes's contorted face, then to me, then in the direction of the hospital. She shut the water off? To the burn center?" The kid looked like he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. Just then, a second cruiser rolled up. This one was driven by Sergeant Davis, a man whose face looked like it had seen too many long nights and stupid arguments. He got out, took one long, appraising look at Agnes, another at Rick's tanker, a third at me, and let out a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the entire municipal code. "Agnes," he said, his voice tired but firm. "What have you done now?" He clearly knew her. This wasn't their first rodeo. "Sergeant," Agnes trilled, momentarily forgetting her outrage in the face of a higher authority. "This is an affront, a travesty. He's creating a public nuisance. Bylaw 12, Section F, regarding oversized vehicles." Sergeant Davis ignored her, turning to me. "And your story, son?" I quickly explained the situation, showing him the notice Jim had found stapled to the valve box. "She cut their water, Sergeant. They need it. This is the only way right now to keep those people safe." Davis took the notice, his eyes scanning it. "Bylaw 7, subsection C, huh?" He looked up at Agnes, his expression unreadable. "Ma'am, Depriving a critical medical facility of water, especially one like Hopewell Burn Center, could potentially move beyond petty HOA squabbles and into something a district attorney might find interesting. Reckless endangerment, perhaps. This tanker, he gestured with a weary authority towards Rick's magnificent truck, while undoubtedly unorthodox and probably giving your petunias a conniption, appears to be attempting to provide a vital emergency service to an adjacent property. It's a bit of a gray area, legally, on a public access road, but right now, Sergeant, their immediate need for water significantly trumps your need for an unobstructed cul-de-sac view. But the bylaws, Agnes sputtered, her face turning a rather alarming shade of puce. The sanctity of the bylaws. Bylaws don't supersede public safety, Agnes, or common human decency for that matter, Sergeant Davis said, his voice dropping a notch. Now, I suggest you step back and let these gentlemen work. We'll sort out the paperwork and the inevitable legion of complaints later. Right now, let's focus on making sure nobody dies today because of a squabble over access road fees. He gave her a look that could curdle milk. Agnes, for the first time since I'd encountered her, looked momentarily silenced, though her eyes still glittered with impotent rage. A small crowd of Hopewell staff, including Dr. Ramirez, had gathered at the edge of the hospital property, their faces a mixture of stunned disbelief and desperate hope. Big Rick, with a surprising agility for a man his size, was already out of his cab, directing the placement of massive python-like hoses. Jim, the facilities guy, was there, ready to help connect to the center's emergency intake valve. Dr. Ramirez rushed over to me, her eyes wide and bright. Mike, I don't know what to say. Is that actually 10,000 gallons? Give or take a bathtub full, I grinned, the tension finally starting to ease a fraction. Big Rick's a miracle worker with a penchant for dramatic entrances. All right, people, let's get this life juice where it needs to go, Rick boomed, easily taking charge. Jimbo, you ready on that intake valve? Gonna be like unleashing Niagara Falls when she opens up, Junior. Agnes, still fuming on her porch but temporarily neutralized by Sergeant Davis's authoritative presence, muttered loud enough for us to hear. This is an affront to civilized living, an absolute abomination. With a powerful hiss and a satisfying thunk, the main hose was coupled. Rick gave a thumbs up. Open her up, Jimbo. Jim wrestled with the hospital's valve. For a second, nothing. Then, with a surge and a roar, beautiful, life-giving water began to gush through the hose. A ragged cheer went up from the hospital staff. I saw Dr. Ramirez press her hand to her mouth, her shoulders shaking with relief. It was working. It was actually, unbelievably, miraculously working. Take that, Agnes Periwinkle, I thought, a surge of fierce, triumphant joy washing over me. You and your damn bylaws can go suck an egg. The atmosphere on Primrose Lane had shifted. Agnes Periwinkle, previously the undisputed queen of her beige domain, was now pacing her porch like a caged wolverine, her face a mask of sputtering fury. But the tide of neighborhood opinion, once cowed by her tyrannical reign of bylaws, was beginning to turn. Windows were open. People were talking, not in whispers, but in audible murmurs that carried on the afternoon breeze. Did you hear? She actually cut the water supply to the burn unit, Mrs. Henderson from 3 doors down stage whispered to Mr. Gable, loud enough for half the street to catch. Agnes has really gone too far this time, Mr. Gable replied, shaking his head. My cousin's a nurse over at Hopewell, you know? Says they were in a real panic. A brave soul, Mrs. Albright from across the street. Even ventured, Agnes, dear, perhaps this wasn't the most constructive way to handle the delinquent fees? Agnes whirled on her. The bylaws are the bylaws. Order must be maintained. Standards must be upheld, she shrieked, her voice cracking, but the usual conviction was missing. She sounded shrill, defensive. Then, as if summoned by the sheer escalating drama of it all, a local news van, Channel 6 Action News, trundled around the corner. A reporter, young, eager, with a microphone already in hand, practically leaped out, followed by a cameraman. Someone, a savvy neighbor perhaps, or maybe even Big Rick with his network of people who get things done, had made a call. The reporter made a beeline for Agnes. "Ma'am, Tiffany Lane, Action News. Can you comment on the allegations that you, as HOA president, deliberately cut off the water supply to a critical care facility, endangering patients' lives?" Agnes drew herself up, attempting to regain her composure, to project the image of the wronged community leader. "I am simply upholding the rules and regulations of this esteemed community against individuals who believe they are above them," she declared, gesturing vaguely towards me and Rick's magnificent tanker. This monstrosity is a clear violation of—" The reporter turned to me, microphone extended. "And sir, your side of this rather unusual story?" I took a breath. "My side? My side is that there are people inside that building," I pointed to Hopewell, "who are fighting for their lives, every single day. Water isn't a luxury for them, it's a lifeline. This lady," I jerked my head towards Agnes, "decided her precious rulebook was more important than those lives, so we brought the water." I gave a nod to Big Rick's tanker, which was now steadily, beautifully, pumping its contents towards the hospital. "Sometimes you gotta fight fire with, well, in this case, a whole lot of water." The reporter scribbled furiously. This was gold! Later, as the initial chaos subsided and the tanker was rhythmically disgorging its life-saving cargo, Sergeant Davis was taking my official statement. Big Rick, having supervised the hookup, was leaning against his truck, sipping a lukewarm soda I'd managed to find for him. "You went to an awful lot of trouble here, son," Sergeant Davis said, clicking his pen. "More than just a concerned citizen, I'm guessing. You got a personal connection to that place?" This was it. The part I hadn't shouted from the rooftops. The quiet, burning core of why I'd gone from mildly annoyed citizen to orchestrator of this suburban water ballet. My voice felt a little rough. "Yeah, Sergeant. You could say that." I paused, the images flashing through my mind as sharp and painful as the day they happened. "My sister, Sarah. She was in a house fire a few years back. Bad one. Third-degree burns over 60% of her body." I swallowed, the memory still raw. "They told us she might not make it, that if she did, her life would, well, it wouldn't be much of a life." My eyes were stinging. I didn't care. "The team at Hopewell, Dr. Ramirez and her people, they performed miracles, absolute miracles. She's alive today, Sergeant. She's walking, she's laughing, she's living because of what they do in that building." I glanced over at Agnes's house, my jaw tightening. So, when I heard that woman, that Karen, had cut their water over money? Over some stupid petty fee? I shook my head. There wasn't a choice. Not really. I'd have driven a fire hydrant through her living room if I thought it would help them. This wasn't just about abstract right and wrong, or some crusade against overzealous HOAs. This was about Sarah. This was about every single patient in that center, fighting battles most of us couldn't even imagine. Agnes Periwinkle, in her quest for bylaw supremacy, had picked a fight with a hornet's nest. And I was the biggest, angriest damn hornet she was ever likely to meet. The immediate crisis was averted. The 10,000 gallons from Big Rick's tanker would keep Hopewell operational for a day, maybe 2 if they were careful. It was enough time, Dr. Ramirez had said with tears in her eyes as she hugged me, to get the city authorities to force the HOA's hand, to get the main lines turned back on permanently. She called me insane. Then she called me a hero. I just felt wrung out, but with a core of unyielding resolve. Don't thank me yet, Elena, I'd told her. This is just round one. Agnes isn't going to let this go. She'll find some other bylaw, some other loophole, and neither am I. Big Rick, overhearing, clapped me on the shoulder with a hand the size of a small ham. Well, son, he boomed, his earlier laughter returning, when you need another 10,000 gallons of whoop-ass delivered special delivery, you know who to call. This has been the most fun I've had on a Tuesday in a good 20 years. Watching Aggie's face when my rig rolled in? Priceless. Sergeant Davis, after giving Agnes a stern lecture about municipal codes and the potential legal ramifications of her actions, which she'd mostly ignored, still muttering about standards, had declared the scene temporarily stable and left Officer Miller to observe and report. The news crew got their dramatic footage and sound bites, promising it would lead the 6 o'clock news. Agnes had retreated into her beige fortress, probably already on the phone with her lawyers, plotting her revenge. As evening began to settle, casting long shadows across Fairweather Palms, Big Rick's tanker stood like a silent, gleaming sentinel, a monument to the day's insanity. Temporary floodlights from the hospital grounds cast an eerie glow on it. I was exhausted, every muscle aching, my brain buzzing, but sleep felt a million miles away. I was on the phone with a lawyer friend, a guy who specialized in David versus Goliath type cases. So that's the gist of it, Mark, I was saying, pacing back and forth in front of Rick's truck. She's vindictive. She's got the HOA board twisted around her little finger. And she tried to hold a burn center hostage. What are our options for making sure this never ever happens again? And maybe, just maybe, getting Agnes Periwinkle removed from any position of power for gross negligence and general unadulterated villainy? Mark whistled on the other end of the line. Wow, Mike, that's quite a Tuesday. Okay, there are avenues. Negligence, endangerment, abuse of power by an HOA officer. We can definitely make some noise, but HOAs, especially ones run by entrenched little tyrants like your Miss Periwinkle, can be fortresses. This will be a fight. A long, ugly, probably expensive fight. I looked over at Agnes's darkened house, then at the warmly glowing windows of the Hopewell Burn Center, where heroes in scrubs were doing their quiet, life-saving work, thanks, for now, to a truck full of water and a whole lot of righteous anger. A grim smile touched my lips. Good, I said into the phone, my voice low and steady. I was just getting warmed up. Agnes Periwinkle wanted to play by the rules. Her rules. She just hadn't realized that I was about to grab the rule book, douse it in tanker water, and rewrite the whole damn game. This wasn't just about one burn center, one Karen, one day. This was about drawing a line, and I had 10,000 gallons of line-drawing material still sitting in reserve, courtesy of Big Rick. The war for Fairweather Palms, and for Hopewell's peace of mind, had only just begun.